Welcome back to This Week, where the Dodgers won the World Series, and we sit down with leaders who bring service, integrity, and real-world experience to the fight for California's future. Today's guest is Dr. Michael Koslow, a veteran, federal agent, educator, and lifelong public servant, now running for Congress in California's 26th district. With over 4 decades of distinguished service, from leading thousands of airmen as California's Command Chief Master Sergeant to investigating billion-dollar corruption cases as a federal agent, Michael's career has been defined by one thing: protecting the American people. Armed with a doctorate in leadership, a master's in public policy, and a lifetime of on-the-ground experience, he's bringing the same mission-first, people-always philosophy to politics that guided him in uniform. A national security expert, small business owner, and community leader, Michael Koslow isn't a career politician. He's a proven servant leader, answering the call to restore accountability, transparency, and common sense to Washington. Welcome, Michael.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. I mean, I read your intro and I think you're overqualified for this job. I think a lot of congressmen, I look at some of them, some don't even have a high school education.
Or have a trouble holding a job, one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You look at Ilhan Omar, for example. She came in negative $45,000 net worth and is now multi-millionaire. So, I mean, you have a wonderful experience of service to this country. What caused you to want to run?
I think what it really came down to is that I was coming back from, I'm sitting on the National Small Business Association Leadership Council back in Washington, D.C., advocating for businesses nationwide. And I just happened to come back and I had somebody I was talking to, an individual by the name of Michael Garcia. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Mike Garcia, the former congressman from the San Fernando Valley.
And we got to know each other from other events that we'd attended previously. And to make a long story short, I was talking to he and some other individuals that were on that flight, and all the problems that we're facing and the lack of leadership and demonstrated lack of capability, like we talked about earlier, in Congress and the rest of the government. So I made a conscious decision of, to your point earlier, I've been a servant leader. I've been a public servant almost the majority of my life. And I thought, it's a calling. I've got to jump back in and do something about this, and at least make the effort to go ahead and do something that's going to benefit my community as well as this nation. So that's why I jumped back in to provide that service.
Well, thank you for doing that. We need more people like you in government. And I think if we had more people like you, we wouldn't be in the hole that we're in right now, especially in the state.
You're right.
I'm curious because I am a small business owner. What did that organization do that you were involved in?
As far as my background, obviously 31 years of federal law enforcement in a variety of different organizations, working multitude of different types of casework. And then 33 years concurrently in the military. Started out as a young airman, as you pointed out earlier, and then gravitated through a variety of different types of work and looking for different challenges constantly as I was moving up. And that was the key. It was always a new challenge, something to go ahead and motivate me to be more involved, more engaging. And then as I grew up in the ranks, to give back and want to do something for the people and the employees and the members that I was working with. And I was able to effectively do that. But my business, I retired from both the military and from the federal government, and went to work in private industry for a healthcare insurer, a major healthcare insurer, and did that and grew up in those ranks as well in a short period of time to a regional manager for 5 different states, providing special investigations work for that healthcare insurer. And then after about 5 years, opened up my own business about 7 years ago, and providing high visibility, high types of casework for investigations as a private investigator, doing cases for attorneys and for clients all over the nation.
Well, that's amazing. As a private investigator, you've probably seen some wild stuff. I mean, outside of the military stuff too, you probably, just in general, you've probably seen wild stuff. But as a private investigator, that's an interesting line of work.
It is. We have 3 different types of focused areas in my agency. It's Enigma Investigation
So you still
agency.
do it?
I still do it. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Not as much because I've got to put a lot of time into the campaign as you would expect.
Yeah.
But we focused on traditional types of private investigations and surveillances, as well as background investigations and those kinds of things. But more importantly, and more on a complex level, we focus in on government contracts, providing different types of security analysis and investigations into high visibility types of casework on behalf of the United States government on government contracts, and then also provide for high visibility clients nationwide and some internationally, I might add, as far as doing work that if the federal government is prosecuting or investigating a particular client for violations of or alleged violations of different types of U.S. codes and laws, then they bring me in to go ahead and take a look at the investigation and the case to be able to go ahead and identify issues that maybe the government got wrong, and that we can go ahead and that we can negotiate a settlement of some kind. And that's what I work on.
As a business owner, how do you feel the business environment currently is in California?
Atrocious. I mean, this is one of the most flourishing states in the union, and we had a lot of people that were coming into this state thinking that they were going to achieve the American dream, to go ahead and have a business and own a home and do all the kinds of things that any family or businessman or woman would want to do. Mm-hmm. And we had the makings and the capabilities to do that here in the state of California. Unfortunately, with the COVID crisis and a lot of individuals moving out of the state, almost 120,000 a year, mm-hmm. And the overabundance of restrictions and permitting requirements that we had in this particular state, it made it impossible to actually effectively run a business. Mm-hmm. And so myself and others that are working with the National Small Business Association back in Washington are trying to alleviate a lot of that stress and provide opportunities to businessmen and women here in the state of California, small businesses. And we're seeing an improvement, but we still got a long way to go.
Yeah, that's so needed. I can tell you from my experience that and I recently went to a meeting of housing providers, and it just seems like the state specifically and the county too, they just want to run mom and pop and small business owners out of business and just deal with corporations, like large corporations and investors. And I've even had meetings downtown in City Hall. I'm trying to get a permit, and I have these. I like to tell the story because this was like a year and a half ago. I like to tell the story because it not only was it part of the impetus for me to run myself, but it just illustrates the hostility that some of these bureaucrats have. But I'm sitting there. I'm trying to get a permit to expand part of my business. This little bureaucrat on his computer is just like laughing and smiling and telling me that I'm the first small business owner he's met in 15 years. And I'm like, what? Like, I mean, this is a pretty common permit, right? What kind of people do you deal with? He's like, well, mostly attorneys representing investors. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I mean, I asked some more questions, but the impression that I got is effectively that the state doesn't want small business owners. And I mean, small business has always been the engine of our economy. Right.
It is. And your point about the impetus, I mean, you have the motivation, you have the wherewithal, you have the capability, you have the initiative and the drive to open up a small business like I did. Yeah. But like you said, there are a lot of impediments to being able to, the bureaucracy precludes that from reaching that reality and that dream. Because of the over permitting that takes place. We saw that in so many, and not only in this state, but in almost across the nation, where the bureaucracy likes that constant large revenue stream that they're getting from the corporations a lot of times. And it undermines the efficacy of our small business community. And that's a problem. So we're working on that. We're working together to be able to provide capital opportunities and investment, remove taxation, and pass-throughs. We were successful in pushing that through from the NSBA's perspective. And our local communities and working with our chambers of commerce and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to be able to go ahead and allow businesses to thrive and reduce the impediments that they're facing right now to increase the number of small businesses and bring them back into California again.
So many left. along with like the millions of people that left, thousands of businesses left as well. It seems like the current policy for the state for small businesses is just raise the barrier of entry as high as possible, so that we can just filter the people that we don't want in business, and that ends up creating, you have these multi-million-dollar corporations, but then you also have like a black market, effectively, of unregulated businesses, and this happens mostly with restaurants. Like, you'll see permitted restaurants that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their permitting, and then you'll see somebody parked outside with a little taco stand, no permits, and just, people walking up. And I mean, it's good food, they're making a living and everything, but I think it's the dynamic there, the person who invested so much to have that location, they're almost getting, they're getting shafted by the state by not having that standard equally applied, right? Because of how Democrats view the situation.
And that's exactly the point. It's a two-track process, is that from a revenue sharing perspective, you've got the large corporations that are coming in that are providing that revenue stream to the community, the tax base and such. And they're getting significant tax breaks too by those communities to be able to go ahead and relocate, let's say, manufacturing capabilities in a particular community. They're getting a significant tax break, whereas the small business obviously is struggling to be able to thrive. So what we're trying to do is reduce those impediments, identify and talk over with. I'm doing that right now with the current Congress folks back in and senators back in Washington D.C. and letting them know some of the issues that we're trying to advocate on behalf of the small businesses to bring them back into the community. Because again, I keep using that word community. Small businesses are community members and part of the community. So you have that relationship between the client and that particular small business, which is unique, and it makes it that hometown feeling, which is something that we were missing, but we're bringing it back again.
Yeah, and would these, everything you're doing with this organization, would it be primarily at the federal level, or are you guys looking at things to do at the state level as well?
Both, actually, the federal level, the state level, and working it through advocates like myself that work on behalf of the National Small Business Association, trying to convey and communicate the needs of our small businesses within the community. One big area that we're working with is the Small Business Innovative Research Contracting in Section 179, which allows capitalization and depreciation from a taxation perspective of businesses to flourish and thrive, and to capitalize and depreciate, if you will, capital expenditures on behalf of small businesses that are involved in innovative research types of contracts with the Department of Defense, the Navy, and other types of government agencies. Up until recently, that was something that was constantly being reevaluated in every administration. It was never made permanent. Well, fortunately, because of the efforts of the NSBA, that has been made permanent now, and small businesses in that sector, within the innovation sector for technology, are able to benefit from that now.
Well, thank God for that. It sounds like a big tax break. Is that what that is?
It is.
Yeah.
It takes off a significant burden off the shoulders of our innovative researchers.
And how do we prevent the county, for example, from coming in and seeing, because, for example, one thing, when I got the space, it's triple net, meaning that my property taxes are built into my rent payment. So is the insurance that, I have to get additional liability insurance on top of that. But what I didn't know that I was going to have to pay in terms of taxes is unsecured property taxes, which is, I mean, I don't know how the city calculates this, but I imagine that they just go through my taxes, see what my accountant filed as depreciating assets, and says, okay, he filed this much, let's tax him this much. And it's $500 to $1,000 a year that I have to pay. How can we stop the county from doing something like that? Like going after, you're doing something good, which is reducing the tax burden for small business owners, and then the county's turning around and saying, hey, we're going to grab some of that. We're not going to let you get away with that. How do we stop them?
That's a good question, and that's something that we have to work consistently with some of our local politicians and our leaders, community leaders, because at the federal level, obviously we can institute recommendations to the different organizations, to the IRS and to other Congress folks that are back in Washington, D.C. now to implement policies and programs that benefit small businesses. But a lot of that, sometimes it's opportunistic. It's like California sometimes, is that the federal government gives you a break, and then the state, under Gavin Newsom and others, and the legislators that we have with the supermajority right now back in Sacramento, that say, hey, here's an opportunity. The federal government's giving back some money back to the constituents and to the people, but yet the state government saying, well, now here's an opportunity for us to take some of that money back, or to be able to go ahead and collect on that. So there's got to be a balance, and the people have got to rise up and recognize that the current supermajority is not working in their interest. And we can talk about the redistricting and things like that right now that are proceeding, but the people have got to stand up and take control of their government. And we're seeing a transition and trend to do that now, and more so than ever. And people are recognizing that, from my perspective in the Republican Party, that we are in a position to educate the public and let them know that the mischaracterizations, misstatements, the outright fraud that's happening with our opponents in the Democrat Party are becoming more and more visible, and we're educating the general public on those issues that can help them make informed decisions when it comes to voting.
Well, there is definitely an awakening happening. I mean, I was looking at numbers from February. I think there were 85,000 no party preference registrations. There were, I think, 48 or 49,000 Republican registrations. Democrat registrations, 190. So, they definitely are losing a lot of support. I think, and I've seen this coming from several Democrat politicians. A lot of them just kind of take for granted that people will vote Democrat. There's that whole, they have this mantra of vote blue no matter who. So I think that they all imagine, all of these elected Democrat officials imagine, they'll just vote for us. They kind of just believe that they can keep coasting that. But, thank God there is an awakening, like you were mentioning. But I still think it seems like we're inching there, but it seems like we're so far away, too, at the same time, because they've had so much control of this state for so long. When is it going to end? When are we going to turn this around?
Well, we are. I'm seeing a critical pivot point. We're at the precipice right now to where we were all thinking that if Kamala Harris, thank God she did not win.
Yeah.
We were thinking to myself, this could be what we're seeing is the downfall of this great nation. And now we're seeing things turn around, and we're in a position to where we're not afraid. There was a reluctance to say what was on your mind. And now because of Donald Trump and his approach, people are saying what's on their mind. They're letting you know what they're thinking. And if something's wrong, they're going to say what's wrong, and they're going to educate. And that's what I see myself as a coach, as an educator, as an individual that will voraciously do the research necessary to determine what is fact, what is fiction, and then broadcast that and provide that information to the general public so that they can make a comparative analysis in their own mind and say, this is BS. And what the Democrats are saying. I mean, I saw just a recent commercial that was on TV with Gavin Newsom getting up there saying, hey, let's vote yes on, and by the way, vote no.
Vote no
on 50.
Yes.
Prop 50. But the point is that he's getting in there on a commercial and says, this is going to go ahead, this redistricting capability is going to go ahead and allow Californians to retain redistricting rights. Okay, not until 2031, which it reverts back. So this is retributional, nothing more, nothing less than because they see Texas and what they did, which was court ordered, I might add, too.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And because of Joe Biden, too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And here in California, in 2010, we had a redistricting commission that was created, an independent council of 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 4 independents that made up this as much as you can, an objective review of and to coincide with the census that takes place every 10 years. And now Gavin Newsom is coming in and saying that this is the greatest thing since mom's apple pie, so to speak, and you need to vote yes on this. Well, it's all crap.
Yeah.
There's no other way to go ahead and characterize it. and misleading the general public. Well, that's why myself and many others within the Republican Party and the different committees that we have throughout the state are working diligently to get the word out as it relates to what this really means, and that this is a power grab by the legislatures, the supermajority, the Democrats in our state Senate and in our Assembly, to get that power back so that way they can go ahead and redistrict those lines to move Republican seats, 5 seats, and others are impacted like mine as well in District 26, to give that power strictly, exclusively back to the legislators again and take it away from the people.
How do they redistrict your district? Because I've seen a lot, like in Orange County, in Santa Clarita, Antelope Valley, they're reaching into Los Angeles to be able to undo the Republican, base that's out in these regions. How do they redo yours?
There's a larger areas within the district in certain communities that have a higher red propensity as far as in voters are concerned. They've excluded that and they've removed that component of that community to another district to be able to ensure that there are more Democrats voting than there would be Republicans. Certainly, you're going to be picking up more areas than moving me further north in the district, all the way up into the Palmdale, Lancaster area in the Antelope Valley. But you're reducing the number of available Republican voters, which by the sheer nature of that reduces the ability for us to win future elections.
Yeah, it's crazy because Republicans are about 40% of the electorate in California. And we have, after this, we're going to have 4 congressional seats. Out of 52, it's almost zero representation of our ideas.
They're thinking about 14 to 17%.
Yeah.
At the most.
And this is a state that Reagan came from. Correct. This is why, to this day, Reagan's influence, a lot of what Trump's doing, he aligns with Reagan. It's... I think there is an awakening, and I really hope that this, I've been told that this special election is going to be a barometer for the midterms next year, but I do hope that the midterms, we kind of just regardless of what happens with redistricting, I am praying for no, and I'm working to make sure it's no wins, but I think regardless, I'm also praying that we kind of just burst through like David and Goliath type thing. Like unexpected. Oh my God, we did everything we could. They still came out of nowhere.
I've got my slingshot ready.
Yeah, right. So tell me about your campaign. What are some of the issues that are important in your district? What do you feel on the streets? What are people telling you that they care about right now?
Well, of course, the biggest issue is inflation. We're seeing that come down. Again, thanks to the Trump administration and what they've been able to effectively do. Remember the price of eggs? That was the big thing for a while.
It was, yeah.
And, we laugh at it, but in reality, it was a barometer, to your point, of, how prices have soared and went up, 4-fold, sometimes 10-fold in certain sectors. But we saw... the inflation rate was at 9.1, 9.2% under Biden before he left, and now it's back down about 2.8, 2.7, which is significant. We see a significant drop, and we're seeing prices significantly starting to come down. Even gas is coming down, not as much as we'd like to see.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other issue with the removal of the 2 more refineries in the state of California, and we can talk about that in nuclear energy, but. That's one is inflation, obviously, bringing those costs down so people can afford things like housing again and just their day-to-day groceries. The other one is public safety. That's another big important issue. We saw transnational organized crime organizations doing what we used to call smash and grabs and going into the communities and very well organized and going into pharmacies and stealing drugs, stealing money, stealing different types of commodities. And just people, home break-ins, those kinds of things. That has been reduced. I know that I'm working with, who's endorsed me, by the way, Sheriff Jim Fryhoff in Ventura County.
Nice.
Who has taken significant steps and is at over 100% manned right now because people are getting back into the military. People are getting back into law enforcement. They see the significant impact and how they can impact their respective communities and provide that degree of public safety. So those things, we're getting people out of the country now. That transitions over to immigration, which is really the primary area I'm working in right now, is immigration reform. is that we have working with some congressional leaders back in Washington, D.C. as we speak on bipartisan practical approaches under what we call the Dignity Act that enables individuals that have been here for about 7 years or more that are undocumented workers working within agriculture, hospitality, food areas that have not been in trouble with the law, have no felonies, that kind of thing. Speeding tickets, I guess, would be okay. Not that it's okay to get one, but just the fact that it's not going to be considered. But in reality, those individuals that are working hard, contributing to society, to give them legitimate status through a work visa program that we already have in place. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just making sure that there's legitimacy and that they are here legally, enabling those individuals that are working in these communities that are providing a benefit to our community and to our nation in these really critical infrastructure areas, such as agriculture, to continue to do so. And the problem that we had was that a lot of the employers were not helping their employees get those necessary work visas. Mm-hmm. And it is a cost issue as well, because it costs anywhere from about $2,000 to $4,000 per employee to file for that work visa. Well, what we're advocating as a part potentially in this bipartisan legislation is giving a tax incentive or a tax credit to those employers for those filing fees. And it was almost like what we did with the Farm Act many, many, many years ago. So that being said, it's a win-win situation potentially that to institute a immigration reform law that gets everybody that's here, that has been here for over 7 years, contributing in some way, that degree of dignity, is saying that you're here legitimate. You don't have to be looking over your shoulder all the time, worrying about somebody coming and knocking at your door saying you're being deported. Yeah. Now, granted, for those that are not contributing, that have been here, let's say, under the last administration 4 or 5 years now, unfortunately, those individuals are going to have to return. And that's why Secretary Newsom has given them the opportunity to do that and self-identify. And I think they get $1,000 if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. They get the plane ticket and $1,000,
and they get to go back, and they get the opportunity to come back into the country. If we have to do it and identify it, they're not going to given that opportunity to come back again. So I agree with Secretary Newsom and what she's doing there. It is a voluntary program in that regard, that you can self-identify and have the opportunity to come back into the country later on. But immigration, to answer your original question, is a big area. I'm working on that with folks back in Washington right now. It is bipartisan, so they have co-sponsors. I think they're up to 84, 85 right now, co-sponsors to Maria Salazar, who's the representative in Florida that's actually spearheading this.
Interesting. I think I heard something about it when she initially launched it. She's like the former Univision host. Yes, I think I remember that. Well, that's great. What is there a homeless situation there as well? Because there are different pockets throughout the state. There are areas that don't have to deal with homelessness, but what's the situation over there?
Every community has a homelessness problem, and it varies from size and capabilities and what kind of resources that you're allocating to that to be able to deal with those people. In my district alone, yes, we do have a homeless problem, and each community deals with it a little bit differently. But I think we have one of the biggest issues that we have to contend with is the mental health component of that. Yeah, is that for those individuals that are homeless, that have identified and a diagnosed mental health problem, that has to be dealt with and it has to be addressed. Right now, there's limited resources with our sheriff's department and others that take on some of that responsibility, but it's on a temporary basis, and we only have limited NGOs and government organizations that have the wherewithal to deal with that. One of my things that I'm working with right now is we have organizations, Project Hope through the Ventura County Sheriff's Department and Camarillo in our district, that provide limited services. We have a place called One Stop, and it literally is one stop, with an emphasis on single moms, single dads that are trying to raise children, even dogs and cats and animals and pets too, because they're your fur babies. We take it very seriously, and we're trying to deal with that and address that. with the limited resources that we have. But one of the things I'm working with is different types of community volunteers and businesses, large corporations as well, in certain sectors, the petroleum and gas companies that are willing to step up and provide resources financially and others to say that we recognize there's a need for even bus cards to be able to transport people from a particular position for those that want to work and reintegrate themselves back into society again. We're finding opportunities, and I'm finding opportunities to be able to make that happen and reintegrate those people back into society. So we are working together collaboratively from a community-based perspective to help them and do that. At the national level, there can be re-education, retraining programs that we can go ahead and institute through different departments that can provide grant money to the states and to the communities to enable those retraining and re-education programs for those that want to be trained and be able to be employed and have that degree of individual dignity, and that they're contributing and they're a part of our communities.
It's so interesting. It's also interesting how there's kind of a consensus, because I've talked to so many different people from different areas in the state about this, and there's somewhat of a consensus forming that the approach that the state and LA County, and I know more about LA County because I'm here, and I go to the Board of Supervisor meetings and I hear them talk about this stuff. But the consensus is that the state and the county have it backwards, where they're focusing on building housing when the problem is actually it's mental health, like you said, and drug addiction. It's two problems that are treatable. You just have to have the policy in place to do it, because if you start housing people that, have some sort of mental health issue or drug addiction, they end up back on the street. In fact, I mention this a lot here. There's a specific Twitter account that I follow that tracks people in San Francisco, homeless people that have been given housing but end up sleeping on the street anyway. There's one guy specifically, and this guy photographs him every day. He has an apartment, but he sleeps on the sidewalk every day.
How can you resolve a mental health problem or a drug addiction problem if you're perpetuating it by giving them Narcan? All you're doing is you're staving off the problem and perpetuating it, and you're not resolving the issue. You're not providing the mental health necessary and the treatments necessary to help those people to get back into society again. You're just perpetuating it, and it's frustrating for many people, myself included, because what are you doing to resolve the problem? And I'm a problem solver. That's what I've spent a lifetime doing, is walking into a particular situation, identifying what the issues are, working with the subject matter experts that have expertise in these different areas, getting a consensus of what's the best approach to be able to resolve it, and then implement it using the available funds, resources that you have. San Francisco is a mess. I'll be nice.
It is, yeah. Harm reduction policies that you were mentioning, they are absolutely ineffective. They just keep, like you said, they keep perpetuating the problem. They just extend it, and we just have to also, I think, in general, just come to an understanding that there's certain drugs that we just have to completely outlaw because they're too addictive and they have a permanent destabilizing effect on people. Like, I was having a conversation with an advocate the other day about meth and the effect, and he studied people's brains after they did meth, and sometimes after one use, the brain is almost irreparably harmed. And we're seeing that too with weed, with cannabis, right? It's been biologically engineered, where you're having people, back in the day, it wasn't as strong as it is. Now you have 80% active cannabinoid on it. And it's causing, in some folks, it's causing almost instant psychosis. In some other folks that have a predisposition for schizophrenia, for example, they're developing schizophrenia within a few uses. So it's, we're kind of creating these problems by not addressing the source, right?
Well, you have to look at your earlier comment about housing. Who is that really benefiting?
Because the developers, the politicians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Low income housing, affordable housing. It's a misnomer for all intent and purposes, because are you really taking care and addressing the problems that you advocate, that you say that you're resolving and building these homes for. No. As a matter of fact, one of the things I was talking with a city council member last week on how the state is imposing penalties if you don't have a certain percentage of the houses, affordable housing built. There's a penalty that's actually being imposed on certain communities, and they're taking these communities, I'm talking about small cities and towns, and large ones for that matter, if they don't meet that expectation and that particular percentage requirement, that they can be sued by the state.
Wow.
And on top of that, the state has implemented policies to where typically you're required to have what they call an environmental impact study that's done. What's the impact on the community? Traffic patterns, fire exits, and emergency evacuation routes, those kind of things like what we're seeing in certain areas, and I won't mention those. But those kinds of things are set aside, and they're not prioritized anymore. Thereby, if a fire happens or an emergency or cataclysmic event happens, all those evacuation routes may be bottlenecked because of the fact that you've built a low affordable housing facility, but you don't have the infrastructure set up to be able to go ahead and provide effective evacuation capabilities in the event that something happens, as far as people have to evacuate quickly. Yeah. So really what's happening is a lot of these legislators and Gavin Newsom are instituting programs and policies that are self-serving, in my opinion, and that are not benefiting the community at large.
Yeah, no, they are absolutely self-serving because it benefits Gavin, perhaps not directly, even though there are a lot of theories about how it benefits him directly and how he makes money off of it. But indirectly, he can give out contracts to his developer friends, to the NGOs that go in there and do whatever work they do, and and then he gets that back as donations to his campaign, right? So it becomes like a little circle of.
We call it the self-licking ice cream cone. Exactly,
that's a good metaphor. And you see it. You see just how dishonest they are with the whole. And I'm just gonna cite this one because to me it's the most obvious one in the Palisades with everything that happened. He announced, I think it was like a month and a half ago, that so at first it was we're gonna expedite the permitting. It happened at the federal level, never happened at the local level. So people are still trying to build their foundations and still trying to build from the ground up. Only part of them, a lot of them are selling. But then he announces $100 million towards affordable housing, which is going to be high density housing in an area that can't accommodate it. And it goes to the problem that you were talking about, how it's effectively going to set up a community for failure. They're not going to have the resources they need to be able to thrive.
Where are the resources? And that's a good point. Where are the resources? I was back in Washington, D.C., receiving a briefing from the new Small Business Administrator, Kelly Loeffler. And the fact that she's been out here, that I know of, twice now to that area over in Pacific Palisades in Eaton to take a look at where the $3 billion that was allocated for small businesses to become rejuvenated and to build those businesses back up again. And there's a lack of accountability. It was given to the county and to the city of Los Angeles, and there's an accountability issue. Where is that money? And we see that's a big issue here in the state of California. We've got billions of dollars. $22 billion for the homeless we were talking about earlier is gone, unaccountable. The audit agencies come back and say, well, we can't find the money. The railway to nowhere, $20 billion there again. It's like, you may as well have a monopoly game sitting there and just start handing out dollars, because that's kind of what our legislators and our politicians in the state of California, the Democrats, there's no accountabilities with your tax dollars and my tax dollars. So it goes to the point where we, with the Eaton fire, we need to ensure that those expedited and streamlined permitting processes are put into place. And we got to make sure that what is the federal government's ability to control that is by the purse strings. Stop handing out the money. And we've done that with USAID, with the Trump administration has identified what he used to call the slush fund. That's all drying up now. And fortunately, there's accountabilities in place now that we didn't have previously to ensure that the tax dollars are being spent appropriately and that there's accountability and visibility and transparency as to where those tax dollars are going.
Yeah, and I've heard that it's gotten so serious, and Washington is so concerned about how California is spending all the money and how it disappears once it gets here, that I actually heard this from somebody in the state legislature about a week ago. They said that the federal government is considering cutting completely all federal money that goes into the state. So about $36 billion a year is just not going to come here anymore. And the quote that they gave me, it was in an interview, so I don't mind repeating it. I just haven't published the interview yet. At the point that I publish this one, it'll be out. So anybody who's watched both, you'll know what I'm talking about. So David Tangapaw mentioned this. He's on the budgeting committee for the. He said that the quote was that the federal government wants to wean California off the federal teat. Mm-hmm. And he said, I mean, the conversation is pretty stark. We're going through our reserves pretty fast, and we pretty much have between 1.5 years to 2 years before the state has to start cutting everything.
Well, all these special programs, let's face it, we want clean climate, and we want to make sure that we're doing things that are responsible in the benefit. I've seen California, and I've seen more specifically Los Angeles, drastically change in its emission structures. The companies and the corporations out here, the oil companies and gas companies, have created filtration systems to ensure that we have clean air, clean water, other things like that. So we've taken significant steps to ensure, from a federal government and the EPA and the OSHA standards, are exceed that of the rest of the nation. Mm-hmm. But to the point to where now it's becoming encumbering, where we're seeing businesses flock out of California. And it's counterintuitive, counterproductive. And is it really, really necessary? So the federal government coming back in to ensure that there's accountabilities, one, for if we're going to give you the tax dollars and the hard-earned money that the American people are paying into that tax base, and it's being used appropriately for its intended purpose, not to go ahead and line the coffers and the pockets of corrupt politicians and businessmen out there. So we're making sure, that's what I think what David's talking about is that, there's a new day of reckoning. And that's what it's going to come down to, is that the American people are not going to stand for just to go ahead and blindly provide you with their hard-earned money and tax dollars, only to have it, to be misutilized and misappropriated.
Okay, so I want to dive more into your background. You have you've worked in counterintelligence for the Department of Defense. Can you tell us what some of that was? Because for me, that sounds like CIA stuff, like Jason Bourne type stuff. So, for people like myself who don't have that kind of experience, what does that look like, and what did you do?
No, and it's a good question. Thanks for that. Early in my career, I worked for an organization called the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. A lot of people knew it from the television show, The $6 Million Man, Steve Austin, who I met, by the way, at down in Florida last year.
Nice.
And what I ended up doing in that particular scenario is I went in there doing all the kinds of different work that OSI is known for, everything from fraud investigations, criminal investigations, counterintelligence investigations. And during that time frame, the Soviet Union was heavily engaged in working with its satellites throughout Europe at the time, in Eastern Europe, and setting up tank brigades, if you will, against NATO assets. So my job was to go in there and provide insight, working with the host nation security services in Belgium, Germany, as well as other countries, to thwart and identify and collect information against the Soviet Union and what they were doing. Under the Reagan administration, there was a deployment of what we call the BGM, I may have this wrong, 109, I think it was, the ground-launched cruise missiles throughout all of Europe to counter the Russian tank brigades. Mm-hmm. And we were very effective at doing that. And we set also to thwart the different terrorist organizations, the Baader Meinhof gang, the Red Army faction, Action Direct in France, and others that had a terrorist presence throughout Europe. And our job collectively, with my fellow agents and I, we were all working to collect information and thwart the terrorist organizations and the threats. There were a lot of bombings. There were some killings and shootings throughout Europe at the time. And we were very effective at being able to go ahead and thwart that. And within about actually 13 to 18 months, working with the host nation agencies, we were there in an advisory capacity, of course. But we did that very, very effectively throughout Europe. And also, as we all know, the Berlin Wall fell as a result of our combined efforts throughout Europe and countering the Russian threat at the time. So that's what I basically did during that time frame. And that was early in my career, very effective, well-trained, and working with some of the best people, both domestically from the United States within the intelligence community, as well as those in Europe.
And how do you collect counterintelligence? Is this like you were like interrogating people, or you were just, how does that work? Because all I know are movies. So.
Well, it's a lot more intense and time consuming than what you see in the movies.
Yeah.
We have more time than 2 hours on a TV show to be able to go ahead and effectively cultivate and collect that information. But it comes down to relationship building. That's really what it boils down to, is relationship building with the folks out there and building a level of trust.
And do they know you're embedded to collect that information, or they?
Well, let's say hopefully the opposing side doesn't know that, but we're never that naive.
So you're riding under the radar the whole time.
Absolutely.
Interesting. And how do you hide your identity?
With certain types of tradecraft and techniques.
Yeah. Do they give you? I mean, I assume you can't give too many details, obviously, or you'd be giving away the game, but do they give you like a whole other identity, or how does that work?
Sometimes that could be, I mean, there's a whole different litany of different techniques that are used to do that. And we're very, very effective at using those techniques. So it really came down to being able to put ourselves in a position to minimize the visibility of what our intent was as for collections, but also recognizing that it was very serious as well, because if our identities had been identified, and in some cases they were, it could be cost you grave damage to your life.
Yeah, I mean, it could cost you your life.
Yeah,
some of these terrorist organizations that you were doing these operations against in Europe, were they just anarchists or Marxists, or what do they
Socialists,
have?
Marxists,
yeah.
There were some anarchists, depending on. And the one thing that worked to our advantage during that time frame, interestingly enough, was that they could never get their act together jointly, because of the ideological nuances and differences in Germany and France and Belgium. Mm-hmm. Belgium was the CCC, France was Action Direct, Red Army faction was in Germany. And because of the ideological nuances and differences, they could never coordinate and organize effectively together. So we use that to our advantage to effectively divide and create dissension between the different groups.
Interesting. And our government sent people like you out there because they got a request from like Germany or France, and they were like, "You guys know how to do this better. Can you guys send your guys over?" Or how did that work?
Different training and different techniques. I mean, everybody trained a little bit differently. It was a collaboration effort. Everybody did come together at least from the Allied side to effectively to create a combined effort to undermine the Soviet Union and their allies.
So these groups were funded by the Soviet Union?
In part.
Kind of like, I see this happen a lot today, but I don't know how much of it is coming from the Soviet Union. I know that China has been funding a lot of different groups like that in America. I know that the two biggest funders of transgender ideology, for example, they're Chinese billionaires who don't fund similar ideology in China. They only fund it here. I've seen that, statistics about how Chinese college students have to report back to China. It's interesting, the dynamic that we have. I mean, they have so much influence. They're so embedded in our country, and there's so much influence. I've even heard that China will, like, let's say somebody moves to America or any other country, a Chinese citizen, they'll monitor and track them for up to 3 generations later, their grandsons. How do you see that situation with China playing out?
Well, China has always been integrally involved with their intent to overtake the United States, both militarily as well as economically. And they use different diplomatic means to convey that they're cooperating and they're working in our best interest. And they know that economically that we have a lot of businesses, a lot of major businesses over in this country that they see a market share in China that they can benefit from, and they do. But at the same time, there's a national security component that needs to be taken into consideration. Certainly, China required 51% ownership of businesses that wanted to operate within China.
Yeah.
And most businesses, because of the recognition that they were going to receive a major market share of operations for their commodities in China and technology, that they would go ahead and sign up to that 51% ownership, which would also give them proprietary rights to certain types of technologies. It's kind of like you're slowly, the old adage of sticking the frog in the cold water and then slowly heating it up.
Yeah.
Same mentality where we were stepping on our own toes and our ability to maintain supremacy on certain technologies and certain commodities nationwide and internationally was being undermined.
What's the justification around us even trusting them? That's such a good point because, there was it the transformers that we found out that we bought from China and they built a back end thing that they could just turn it off whenever they wanted. And then just now we accepted, knowing that their students are spying on us, we just accepted 600,000 students to save 15% of our colleges. I mean, what's the logic around knowing that we have this huge enemy that really is aggressive towards us? Why would we keep just allowing them to just take inch by inch?
Well, this is the thing in politics sometimes, is that you're trying to resolve multitude of different issues, and it's the lesser of two evils sometimes. And not that I agree with it in any way, shape, or form. Coming from a national security background, I always put national security in America first and foremost in any considerations. But sometimes you have different departments within the federal government and state governments. Matter of fact, I remember we have this issue right now with China buying up a lot of properties near our military installation.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, yeah. Aren't they the biggest landowner in America right now?
Well, I wouldn't say the biggest, but they're one of the largest.
Yeah.
One of the largest. And that being said, I remember some mayor of a community, and I want to say Montana, where we have some of our nuclear silos located, saying, well, this is a business decision and, it's really great for the community. But again, they're not taking into consideration the national security interests as well as the true intent by the Chinese State Party, the CCP, to implant themselves and integrate themselves into our infrastructure in such a way that will undermine our ability to protect this country's interests. And so going back to your question about China has recognized that they're going to just do this very slowly, and they've effectively done this over about 40 years now.
Yeah, they've been very patiently doing it.
Very much so, but very successful. I remember when I used to give briefings on technology transfer initiatives years and years ago, that we were probably anywhere from 20 to 25 years ahead of them in a variety of different technologies. And that's been reduced now down to maybe anywhere from 2 to 5 years in certain technologies. They've surpassed us in some. And we're gaining that back under the Trump administration, thank God. Donald Trump and his cabinet level members are really doing an outstanding job on, one, identifying where our vulnerabilities are at, and two, what are we going to effectively do to be able to recapture that advantage and that technological capability again to our advantage? And we're doing that now. Dollar short, day late, maybe. Yeah. But thank God that we're turning that around and doing things that are going to put us back into the preeminent role again as an international leader.
Yeah, and I see right now being such a critical time, especially I think for Republicans like us, people who are running for office, I think it's so critical that we throw our hat in the ring so that we can start making changes that serve this country instead of, going down the same path that Democrats have been taking us down. Because it seems like there's an active effort to undermine and dissolve the country from within. And it's not just coming from China. I've been seeing a lot happening in terms of, there's a similar effort from the Islamic Brotherhood to come in here and do the same thing. And they've actually actively infiltrated communities in Michigan and in Minnesota, and they're trying to create their own city in Texas. And I was even watching a video today from this guy who he was in Dearborn, Michigan, and he was trying to give out the Gospel of John in Arabic. And the police came in and said he couldn't do it because of some city ordinance that a local official, that was a Muslim local official, passed, of like the distance between
Sharia law.
Exactly. It's like, it's soft Sharia law. It's the way he described it, where it's not actually Sharia law because you can't have it, but it's like a form of it that's been, for some reason, made it into the books. So, I mean, how do we, it's so confusing. How do you push back without actually escalating this into like a full-blown war with two different entities that are already exerting soft power in America? Good
question. We're seeing that pushback and retaking and reinstituting the provisions of our Bill of Rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment, and so on, through our Attorney General, our new Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And she is taking those steps to where those clear violations of civil rights are occurring. She's filing lawsuits, and we've seen that in the different communities. In Dearborn, to your point, one of the things that I see that we have as an advantage, that if there's clearly a violation of human as well as the civil rights under the Constitution of the United States, that lawsuits are being filed on behalf of the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to say, and to let those communities know, in those states know, that you are violating civil rights and it will not be permitted. And working in the interest of the communities and the people in those communities to ensure that their basic civil rights under the Constitution are not infringed upon.
So we'll effectively litigate our way out of it.
Correct.
Where, with enough precedent. Well, yeah, I mean, let's hope we don't turn into England.
Well, you see what Donald Trump is doing right now, specifically here in California and in other states, Michigan, and I can go down the list. But clearly he has a mandate from the American people to ensure that their civil rights, basic civil rights, as well as their public safety is maintained. And and we see, the Johnson in Chicago taking a position that is counterintuitive to the public safety interest and saying we're doing better now and we can handle it. Well, if you've got 1,400 deaths through murder a year or more, and now we're down to 1,200. It's almost laughable, and it's unfortunate because those are people's lives that are being disrupted as a result of homicides and rapes and burglaries and such. And the public safety clearly is an interest, and it may be being reduced, but it's still significantly impacting those communities. Donald Trump has taken on a mandate to say that, and having been with the National Guard myself for quite a few years, and as you know, being the command chief for the California Air National Guard, is that it's well within his right under Title 10 and Title 32 of the United States Code to ensure that the public safety is maintained in a variety of different circumstances, to include prohibiting and precluding insurrections. And right now, we're on the borderline of that actually happening in many communities, to where the public safety is not being maintained. As a matter of fact, it's counterintuitive in places like Portland right now, to where the councilmen do not have the fortitude to be able to, almost use that other word, the fortitude to take the necessary actions to ensure the public safety. Donald Trump and the administration has the right under the Constitution to ensure that in domestic tranquility and the public safety.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for the National Guard being deployed to these cities, because so many of these leaders have shown that they, like you're mentioning, they don't have the public's best interest. They don't want to ensure they've entrenched themselves so much in their ideology that for them, enforcing our country's sovereignty is effectively a war crime to them. That's what you mentioned, Johnson, and making these ICE-free zones, which is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have the authority to supersede the federal government. It's just I'm just hoping that
California,
at some point,
you can't wear masks.
Oh yeah, right. That too.
I mean, the legislation that came out.
Didn't Newsom just put that out?
He did.
Yeah, they tried to do that. I just really, to me, it's all political theater, and it's such a waste of our time and money as taxpayers to see them do it. And I just really hope that people see this for what it is and start waking up and voting differently, because all of these guys, every single one of these Democrats, and I say Democrats because you only see it on one side now. Mm-hmm. You only see it on the Democrat side. They're the ones who feel entitled enough to do this kind of stuff, who feel like, bold enough to go out and challenge federal law and challenge the needs of their constituents. Republicans don't do that. You see, we're actively trying to cut taxes and improve your quality of life, make sure that you actually get what you're paying for,
We have actually immigrant support organizations, which is great if you need to provide subsistence and day-to-day survival capabilities. But when you're actually out there as a proponent to create dissension, disruption, and hostility and riots, mm-hmm. which some of these organizations are doing, I see that you're pitting federal law enforcement against local law enforcement and county law enforcement. The state is coming in and saying, or the counties, more the state, is saying, do not help ICE or CBP. Don't help them. You can't do anything for them. Well, it's creating a dilemma where law enforcement are being told don't provide safety for anybody in those situations. More specifically, other law, don't help them. Well, I remember seeing in the Glass House event over in Camarillo, California, mm-hmm. where 386, I think, individuals were arrested, and they found 10 undocumented, unaccompanied children that were there. 4 in...
This was that weed farm?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. 4 up in Carpinteria, 10 were in Camarillo, Oxnard. And that being said, 386 undocumented workers were identified, or illegal aliens were identified. In that particular situation, there are organizations, illegal alien and undocumented worker organizations, saying that this has been disruptive to the families of those undocumented workers. They're just hard workers and that kind of thing. And why is local law enforcement assisting ICE in that? Because one, the ICE had called in, and other organizations had called in support saying that they were being fired upon. And we saw the one video where undocumented worker is sitting there holding a weapon up and shooting back at law enforcement.
I mean, we've seen these guys get hit by rocks. I saw a video from Chicago this past weekend. This woman in an SUV hits the back of an ICE vehicle and just keeps driving mm-hmm. and pushes the car, and you see the car disappears for a bit. You see them like 100 yards out. She's still doing it. And, the agent eventually is able to pull his car aside. He gets out, pulls his weapon out, asks her to get out. She just bolts. It's
a lot of that's the rhetoric too. I mean, look at the rhetoric that's coming out of the Democrats back in Washington and here locally. Mm-hmm. People trying to break security lines, politicians, to your point about performative politicians out there trying to get themselves in the news. It's again irresponsible, and they're doing nothing but inflaming the situation, creating hostility, because somebody that is not adequately or sufficiently informed as to what the realities are, mm-hmm. which is what I'm doing, and others are trying to inform the public as to what's really happening out there. You've got those that just want to inflame it for the purposes of political gain.
Yeah,
and then we've got to stop that. I mean, you've got the Maxine Waters, and I can go down the list as well.
Yeah,
that are out there just saying AOC and many others, Omar. Making those kind of comments that just do nothing to infuriate, inflame, and pull those emotional strings on people that are not informed, and they're reacting emotionally as in response to what ICE is doing, and you see the results now.
Well, Michael, feels like we're going through an earthquake right now.
But I think there's hope at the end of the tunnel.
It's an earthquake happening.
But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we're preparing.
We can talk about the earthquake. It just happened. It's okay.
Are we?
Hold on.
Oh, you're talking about an actual earthquake.
It was an actual earthquake. Yeah, the whole building was. You didn't feel it?
Yeah, I did, but I thought that was like a truck or something out front.
Oh no, that was an actual earthquake.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It felt like it was maybe a 3.5 to hit us, but
maybe your outstanding interview capabilities moved the earth today.
Yeah, right. This is like the third earthquake that we've had. This building's from the 1920s, and it's built solid. So there was one that we had here. I think it's been about a year, and we were in that studio, and everything was shaking. So, thank God. But
I didn't see any dust falling down, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, no, that's a good sign. This building is solid. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to derail that a bit. I felt like we had to acknowledge it because I'm feeling my chair like shaking, and I hear that like moving. I'm like, okay, is this an earthquake? I just had to. Okay, so anyway, let's wrap that up. I'm sorry, I derailed it.
No. I think we're on track. Bottom line is that I think we need to have responsible speech, and what we're saying that motivates the public to resolve issues, to work together collaboratively to identify what these issues are, work together in a bipartisan way to resolve those issues, and not try to inflame the public and create divisiveness. I mean, that's really what the Democrat Party is consistently doing, because they recognize that their messaging is not effective, is not benefiting the general public. And that's why I think we're seeing a lot of people, tens of thousands, coming over to the Republican Party. NPPs that were sitting on the fence and weren't quite sure where to go, they're coming over to the Republican Party now to do their best to be able to resolve problems, not only for themselves, but for their families and for this nation as a whole.
Well, yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. And they have no substance, no policy. It's all like Trump's bad, and they think they can run on that. Good luck. Like people...
DJT syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. People vote based on ideas. I think it's been proven time and time again that policies, you can attack your opponent as much as you want. If you don't have policy to back it up,
And results.
Exactly.
And results. And people get out there and talk about the problems. And all the politicians that we see today on the Democrat side talk about problems, and try to inflame that even that much more, fear-mongering. Republicans have solutions, and that's why I'm doing this, because I have the solutions. I know what needs to be done. I know which people to work with to get those things done and which organizations to work with to accomplish those major tasks. We're on the track to be able to go ahead and get those things corrected, to your earlier point about turning things around.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I'm really happy that we have people like you in the party that are experienced and have this, broad understanding, not just of public service, but of the world itself. To hear that stuff from back when Reagan and the fall of the Berlin Wall, it reads like a movie to me, but I'm so happy because you have the kind of experience that can actually inform what we're going through now, and it can help us get through it and have the appropriate solutions so we can go back to it. And I think for many Americans, it's go back to a sense of normalcy. Mm-hmm. Go back to that, like for me,
common sense.
For me, I think a lot like, when Bill Clinton was president, things were a little rocky and crazy. He was a little out there, but America was America. Today, it feels like there's this, the country kind of has, because of how far the Democrats have gone, it lost a little bit of its identity, and that's calculated, and they want to do it on purpose. They want to undo this country because they want to just have the revolution.
The
right?
Statue of Liberty was there for a reason. It was a beacon of hope.
Yeah.
And to the rest of the world. And the United States was the leader.
Yeah.
In democracy and perpetuating democracy as a constitutional republic. And we're getting back to that again. And that's why I'm glad to be able to see that. So please, anybody's got any questions for me, reach out to WW.
Let's do that. Look into that camera right there and tell where you can find your website, your social media accounts, how they can donate to you.
Sure. And thank you again for this opportunity to be able to talk to you and the public. please, if you have any questions whatsoever or have any particular issues that you want to be addressed on any of the subcommittees that I talk with, is reach out to me, Michael S. Koslow, for Congressional District 26, which is Ventura County and West Los Angeles County, at www.votemichaelkoslow.com. I'm on all the different website, social media platforms right now. So please, I recommend get with me, talk to me, share any information that I have on those websites with others, so that way we can generate and continue this movement and getting us America First platform back again. Thank you again.
And I'll put all that information in the description down below so you guys can check it. It flashed on the screen as he was talking as well. So thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. You have a great day.
You too.